or not improv, but it's like a street performance group?
It's an ensemble of residents who live in the Tenderloin and primarily in the supportive housing SROs that are, we're creating work around the stories of their lives. Yeah.
And sometimes there's open mic, correct me if I'm wrong, but like sometimes there's open mics where anyone can participate, and sometimes there's more structured work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We aim to structure as much as possible, but also with a lot of room. So it's kind of a different genre than, when you say street theater, I wouldn't call it street theater because that conjures a different genre, but it does happen outside.
Mm-hmm.
So it's often on the street.
Is there, and I'm new to the art world, and so how do you keep people safe? In terms of like, if somebody, you're activating trauma, it sounds like you're talking about really important, like, situations that affect people's neurological, like, trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So, even in a contained space that is in, like, where there's people there kind of like, I don't know, guarding. Like, how do
you take care of that
and
stuff?
how do you do that? Or do you, and then like, I'm just curious as to like, what have you encountered around that, and how do you keep love or the stand of like, I'm here to see you and everyone's okay, or do you just trust that it's gonna work out, or like, what are your thoughts around that?
I have a lot of thoughts around this. Do you all want to, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Do you want to say something about that?
Right now I am working in a program of Mujeres Unidas. Mujeres Unidas is an organization that promotes empowerment of Latina workers right here in San Francisco and in Stockholm. And I have been meeting them. Right now it's very intense, extremely intense, because there is a tremendous amount of fear that they are like there. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a social worker. I am an artist. I mean, that's what I do. Well, that's what I do. So one of the things that I go, I get every time when I prepare myself to go there. It's like I am extremely anxious because I don't know what to do, right? But one of the things that it has helped me is that when I come in, I ask them, you know what, we are going to breathe, and we are going to breathe together, and we are going to be able to have some healing in our body. We are going to be that, and I'm going to tell you jokes, and probably you should tell me jokes or something. And it has been working. Because I can. I don't know. Also with the Skywatchers, it's really hard. I'm not a social worker. But we try to just okay, so let's bring the drums, okay, ha 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 ha. Yes, okay, now this is the ball, okay, catch the ball, okay. It's just I don't know.
Can I just say, go on, Ron.
I want to speak to that too, because I know that in the practice of trying to do arts activism work, or just things where you're, like you said, putting your emotions in vulnerable places. It's really important, I think, from personal experience for me, I think it's important to build containers of support and recognizing that we're creating, because I think art activism has, I think many meanings, but if we go into the purposes of it, it's sometimes it's cathartic and sometimes it's activating, right?
Yeah.
And really understanding that when you're creating space to create these projects, it's really one of those things where how are you honoring and embracing the emotions and what needs to be said or what needs to be expressed, and how you want to put that forward as a force to change things in ways that allow you to be fully yourself, and to externalize that process. And it's difficult, like you said, like, you know, I think that when you're working to create or to externalize, it's really difficult. I mean, especially now, like, you know, it's you know, it's wild what's going on like around us. But I think it's really important to when in the process of creating art, in service of putting your emotions in like a healthy way that like allow it to do what you want it to do in the world, to view it as being like innately, I guess in a sense too, like a healing kind of ritual. Like you know, I think that like one of my mentors has always said to me, you know, it is a sacred and revolutionary act to fold your clothes, and the metaphor of that is really that, like, in our lives, through our lives since you were born, you know, we have rituals that keep us alive. You know, eating, drinking, you know, washing our clothes, all these things, right? And what are the rituals that create the life that you want our future generations and yourself to live in? And I think that the practice of creating work that allows those things to be externalized creates those possibilities, you know? And it does so in a small way, and it has to come with like tangible action, you know, because then it goes into the process of being just cathartic, where you're, you know, like, and that's important too. Like, you need to have that space. But how does your practice echo and impact the lives of the people that you want to impact, you know? And like seeing that is important as well. So just some 2 cents around that question.
Can I add another 2 cents to that? That was so beautiful. That's so eloquent. Thank you. There are 2 things I wanted to say. One is just anecdotally, like I remember one day going in to the Iroquois, and it was a Harry. You never met Harry? Anyway, you did meet Harry. Harry had just been attacked in his own, you know, room, and nobody was taking care of him. It was one of these, like, nobody gives a shit about me. And he was talking just to me, and I'm usually writing, you know, as much as I can of what people are saying. And he's crying and he's screaming, and I'm writing, and I'm thinking, this is like, what am I, a sociologist or something? It's weird. And I said, do you mind that I'm writing down this? And he said, no, please do. So I kept going, because that's what I do, and they know it, and actually people feel like I give a shit. That's why I'm writing. It's not because I have some official sociological or social worker hat. They know that I am there because I care, and it's more like a complaint when people don't write things down, because I feel like they're just kind of, yeah. But anyway, so I'm right. And then when he was finished with his diatribe, I mean, I could have chosen to just hug him and try to but I didn't. I read it back to him, and he said, "That's amazing," you know. And that to me has been like that's a repeated every week story. That's why this program works, because the things that come out of people's mouths are poignant and heartbreaking and fucking brilliant and gorgeous and much better than I could ever construct, or if we tried to, you know. And so he's like, that's my poetry. And then he was like, okay, so this isn't poetry, this is my life, and that's how it starts, right? So just that anecdote, that I don't set myself up the same way Jose said as anything but what I am. Yeah. And I also want to just add that, you know, I mean, Claire and I were smiling at each other, because this question came up recently in a grant proposal, where somebody was like, I don't know, you're dealing with trauma, I don't think you're qualified. Like, we're not going to give you this grant kind of thing. Well, I don't think you're qualified to handle the trauma that comes up. And I'm just like, well, the trauma is there. We aren't bringing any trauma out. The trauma is there, that we do create a container for people to be who they are. They feel safe, they talk about this, but it's not like, you know, it's not like most people in the room. It's not like the folks, like I've had, you know, when I had a formal dance company ensemble, I had, you know, nice, young, middle-class, educated women walk out of the company and say, I don't want to do this work because it's re-traumatizing me, because I'm talking about sexual violence, or I'm talking about some other kind of issue in the world. that's never that's happening there. So in other words, I felt like, oh gee, my work inadvertently caused harm to someone I cared about in my ensemble. That's never happened in this situation. I'm not making a judgment, just sort of.
No, I mean, I know in kind of more indigenous cultures, that's how trauma is healed, is through art, and
Yeah.
through community, and through dance, and through being witnessed, and through like being able to process all of the emotions through community. So, yeah, I was just
Yeah,
curious as to
that's a
that
good question.
process, yeah.
Can I add? I was really worried too. The benefit that I had was that Anne has been meeting with this group for 5 years at the time that I started to meet with them. So she had created this container, this safe container, and Jose and I actually just sort of hung out for 7 months before we started to facilitate any kind of rehearsal process. So I think just kind of getting to know people, like being human, like anybody here has the capacity to be compassionate and get to know people and who they are and what things they are willing or not willing to talk about, how long they can be in the room with a group of people or not, and when they leave suddenly, that's okay, or I should go make sure they're okay. But I was worried, and so I actually I was like, I need to take get professional advice or something, and so I went to a retreat where there was this Dharma teacher who was training nurses and other professionals who did this for a living. I'm not a therapist, but one of the things that they talked about was the process of how they heal they lead someone through the process of healing trauma, and I mean, not that I used any of the things that they were talking about because I don't know enough, but I just noticed, like when June would leave the performance space and then come back, cry and then leave and then come back repeatedly, like that was a thing that they were talking about. Like you tell your story, I mean, probably any of us who have experienced trauma in any degree can imagine this, like, oh, that person broke my heart and I'm going to tell this story to my friend and I'm going to cry a lot, and then like 3 months later I'm going to tell the story again and I'm not going to cry quite as much, and then and then 3-4 years later it's like, yeah, I can talk about that sad event or that traumatic event and I'm okay with it. So I mean, that's such a pat answer. It's not the answer in all cases, but it's less scary, I think, when you're just in there interacting with folks and you realize as a human, how you want to respond.
Yeah, just I want to add that also, it has to do with time, like how much committed you are to be with them. Because if you come for a really short time or 1 week or something, and then you are open up those doors of trauma, I mean, I think this is very detrimental for the community. But I think when you set yourself that you want to be with it for a long time, things are shifting. I think I do believe that healing happens, but it's a long process, and it's about commitment. It's about commitment.
I think we had another question.
Yeah, it feels like many of you have been doing this work for a long time. So I'm wondering what is different about this time in this administration that's going to breathe a different energy in art for this world? Like, what is different?
No.
I think that, I don't know, I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that I think we need to start figuring out ways in which we embody arts in an interventionist sense, more so. I think that's so needed. I think that like really challenging the like arts community and like the realm of where art and activism meet is like, what are projects that can really be in service to communities that are most impacted? Because it's difficult in this period of time. We need like these spaces to process our emotions. Otherwise, we'll go catatonic with the situations that are in front of us. I think that in creating these spaces, we need to, and a friend of mine really put this in such a unique way that I had never thought about it this way before, but like stories and artistry, we are so used to consuming it on a day-to-day, visual stimuli from social media. I mean, we tell stories every day with our, digital footprints and even the work that we produce and all this stuff. But we've become so normalized into just consuming struggles and consuming stories where we have the awareness in our heads that these things are happening. But the challenge, and I think the thing that I want all of us, I think, to question coming out of this space today is, what do we do in terms of creating the work that's needed that helps propel the sense of justice that we need? Whether that looks like creating like a blockade, like an action, or whether it looks like holding space for a conversation to articulate a theory of change that like we can act on now. Because I think there is so much like lunacy in the political climate at this moment, where like it's really how we tell this story that allows for the like society as a whole to come together to like interact with this narrative to make it into reality, right? So I would say that in this political climate, more than ever, we just need more spaces of interdisciplinary communication, because I think that in a sense too, it's like, for example, a lot of the work that I was doing around anti-water privatization, I was speaking to a panelist about this earlier, about how not many people want to go to a state water hearing to like talk about what's going on with infrastructure projects, right? But how can art serve to really tell people, like, if you don't show up to these meetings, then these projects will continue, and I think it's really important that the arts are a vehicle for people to recognize that we have a say, and we need to act on it. But it's difficult because also, I don't know, just from my context, living in a system that is inherently colonial and has capitalist dynamics that allow the extreme poverty piece that you were mentioning. These barriers happen, and there's a spectrum of even privilege being able to create work. And it's like, how do we leverage that privilege that allows communities to benefit in a really solid way, and that's one thing that I've been struggling as well, is just like not to consume other people's oppression, but to be able to reverberate it in a way that allows for solidarity, because otherwise it's hard, because we live in such a mass media produced culture where content is being produced and being produced and being produced, and it's like, how do we do things a different way that isn't in this exploitative consumptive way? How do we do things in a way that actually mirror neurons, like you were talking about, have people see the mirror of humanity, so that we're like, that will not happen to this community, that will not happen, and I think art has a huge role to play in that. So
Yeah, really good.
yeah. But, go ahead. Yeah. Okay, this one's-
I'm sorry, what was your question?
Does this apply to the current situation?
How do I apply to it? Well, the thing is, for me, it's like to have some kind of perspective, because, I really truly believe, I don't think Hillary was the choice that we needed. And she was a time to kill for something to happen, because all these things that now we are facing, I remember at the beginning of the elections, like a lot of white supremacists, a lot of Ku Klux Klan, it was like a big phenomenon happening. And that happened because there is a lot of white poor people. Talking about economics. Talking about there is a lot of discrepancy of resources, and in the Middle West, there is a lot of poor people. So there is I feel that sooner or later the shit will hit the fence, and that's what is really happening. So for me to really be able to understand that, it kind of really okay, sooner or later we are going to face that shit. So So now we are sooner
we're
than purpose in action. So that for me, and I think that thinking about that kind of really makes me really think about like I need to be focused. I think I need to be sharp focused in whatever I do. Because we are doing it. I mean, all the people that are here, are in a way, whatever we do is for that reason. That is like how we can just keep going, get focused. Because all the stuff that is happening in the media, it derails us. I mean, it's extremely overwhelming. I mean, we are like, and everybody. I mean, also, sometimes it happens. So like you wake up and see your phone and it's like, what the fuck? Now. But I think for us to be able to have some perspective and be able to just keep focusing on what you do. And sometimes you need to do things that they need to be I was thinking a lot about that sometimes in the community there are missing pieces that sometimes you need to take those roles or the missing pieces in the community. And I think sometimes that's what I am trying to do. I mean, like, I know that we need to do a lot of healing in our communities. I know that it's very important to bring the ritual things of our culture. Like, we need to heal ourselves. We need to be very esoteric. We need to bring all that rhythm into ourselves to deal with it. So I don't know anything. I mean, but I think hopefully by doing, I will find something that it will help us to come together.
Yes. I think there was something in the question that said, how is it changing things? And I think I mumbled under my breath, not. Because I was afraid of this question all day, honestly. Because Paulina had the question too for us, and I feel like the reason I was afraid of it as I interrogated myself, as I did inquiry, was because I agree with you, and it's not like a big thing. It is like a huge thing changed, and it's unprecedented, and it's horrible, and it's a daily kind of atrocity and outrage, and it's also the continuation of something that's been going on for a very long time. Both these things are true, and going to El Salvador and back, it's also really nice to have this perspective because they're just like, yeah. Like we saw this coming. Why didn't you see it coming? It's like, this is neoliberalism. This is the end result. This is what's happening, and it's horrible too at the same time. And I think that so we keep doing the work that we've been doing, and we get more focused and we get more eloquent, and we don't succumb to the overwhelm, because that's part of the strategy, is to keep us overwhelmed, to try to get us confused, overwhelmed, and despair, because there's no question they don't give a shit about any of the people who are in this room right now. There's no pretense anymore. But yeah, so that's my strategy is don't get overwhelmed, and don't think that what you're doing is somehow like not enough. It's got, it may not be, but to not get pulled off of your own path. Just get stronger in your path.
Yeah.
And
do you think
find community? Also find community for those of us who are introverts and who or hermits or whatever. It's really important that we don't isolate.
And I'm curious, if the election had gone the other way, if we were in a different climate, would your work look different than it does now, or are you doing something different?
I just think it would be more insidious. Not the work situation. This is just out there. It would be a different,
I feel like it's too early to tell. I feel like we have a tremendous panel here who are already incredibly engaged, and that I'm a little hopeful that because of what has happened, that there are more people working in the arts industry who are hopefully more engaged and more activated, and that there is a possibility of being able to collectively work together and direct that in a way where, as you were talking before, each person's bringing whatever their thing that they're focused and really good at to the table. But we're 30 days in. Like yeah. We're 30-some days in. So like, while it feels like there is a bit of both anxiety but a groundswell of passion that could change things, it could very well settle down to some complacency and be very similar to what had happened if the election had gone the other way. It just,
Just to kind of jump off of that, I mean, like, I think that Hillary would have pacified us, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, where, I think, the embodiment of, I refer to that human as 45. The embodiment of 45 was, just the extremes of misogyny, of white supremacy, of, like militarism, of climate denial, anti-intellectualism, trans misogyny, and there's these blatant, even in and of himself, he has become a symbol of those long-lasting systems that have been felt for centuries, in different communities, right? And it's good that, in a lot of ways, I think it's not good, but I mean, I think that the fact of this awakening has spurred the opportunity that we are in a moment where the clay is on the table, and what are we molding it into collectively? And I think that we forget that we as people, we consent to a society. So if we don't consent to this society that's being paved in front of us, what do we do alternatively, right? And I mean, I think that comes in a number of ways. And I mean, a lot of my work has been trying to integrate research into the practice of art, and how do we take these concepts that that are emerging in our society, and how do we make it palatable to the communities that are starting to see the veil lifted, that the United States of America has been in this illusion, albeit American citizens, U.S. American citizens, have benefited a lot from privilege in the context of the global world. Like you said, Elvis Salvador, neoliberalism's not new. A lot of exploitation has happened in other countries, and we're starting to realize we are in a globalized period. So what does a globalized arts culture look like? What does it look like to understand that things going on in terms of saltwater intrusion and drought in the Caribbean, how is that happening alongside California suffering the same issues? And what do we do to be able to build the balance of actually creating, through art, the conversations that future generations need to build a society that we want, right? And ideas aren't created overnight. For example, the highway system. The highway system in and of itself is an arts project, right? Back when fossil fuels were like cigarettes, we didn't know that it was bad. It was a marvel that there were streets, massive streets, linking the entire country. That was collectively imagined and consented to build. So what seeds are we paving for the echoes of future generations to build a society that exists free from oppression, free from this incredibly difficult political moment? And I was working on this project last year with a team of folks, trainers. We're all part of this training team, and we led a week-long leadership program for youth ages 14 to 28, so it's somewhat intergenerational, but we decided to employ the arts as research practice by creating a video project in service of the trainings we were going through. So we were and all the trainers had different experiences. One person was working on student education reform, and one person was working on anti-animal agriculture work, and some folks were working in policy, and some folks were out on the streets, and there was just a wide variety of perspectives. But we created this video project called MMXVI that really memorialized 2016 as being an incredibly fucked up year. Because it was. And not to say that, 2017, 30 days in, or no, not 30 days. We're in this year and it's, who knows. But last year, I felt like there was such a prevailing sense of despair that kept on wringing itself out in different ways. We saw Orlando happen, and that was incredibly difficult on my soul as a queer person of color. We